This Week in Richmond is made possible in part by Dignity Memorial, caring for our communities with a network of funeral homes and cemeteries in Virginia and throughout North America. More information about Dignity Memorial's providers is online at dignitymemorial.com. Alpha Natural Resources, an energy company dedicated to respecting the land. Alpha Natural Resources, we power the world through the energy of our people. Haley Buick GMC, the place for a new Verano or Terrain Denali, in Richmond and online at haleybuickgmc.com. Everywhere there are lighting poles, there's one more opportunity to save money. Intelligent Illuminations provides cost-effective wireless lighting solutions for roadway or area outdoor lights. Kanawha Valley Arena, Virginia's cowboy town, hosting an array of events from Civil War reenactments to diesel truck pulls. More information online at virginiarodeo.com. The Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of the Virginia business community, working in legislative, regulatory, and political arenas to promote the free enterprise system. Additional support is provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.
Welcome to This Week in Richmond, and a very special welcome to a new guest. We haven't had you on before. Delighted that you're here. Lisa Wallmeyer, Senior Attorney with the Division of Legislative Services, with primary responsibilities with JCOTS, staffing JCOTS, the Joint Commission on Technology and Science. And so we want to have a conversation to inform our viewers something about JCOTS, because as you and I were talking some before we started taping, it's been around since 1997. Many people know about what JCOTS is all about, but others don't. So start us off by just telling us some about JCOTS.
Okay, great. Thanks for having me. JCOTS, the Joint Commission on Technology and Science, as you mentioned, was established in 1997. It's a permanent legislative commission of the General Assembly. We have 7 House members and 5 Senate members, and our task is very, very broad. It's to study and recommend policy to the General Assembly related to science and technology policy, which these days you can make an argument that just about anything is related to science or technology. So we really have a broad base of issues that we get to look at every year, and the agenda changes every year, which makes it a really, really interesting committee to staff.
So the agenda is pretty much set by bills that are referred to JCOTS?
We get issues really 2 different ways. We do have bills that the General Assembly refers to us for study. Often that's because the bill raises a technical issue that maybe the members don't feel completely comfortable with yet, or want to explore further the technologies behind why the law is being suggested to be changed. And so this year we actually had really a record-breaking number of bills referred to us compared to the past several years. And we are looking at bills dealing with everything from electronic textbooks in K through 12, open source textbooks at the college level, some cybersecurity issues, especially related to electronic return of overseas ballots, some computer crimes issues, so really just the gamut. But the other way that we get topics is oftentimes a member will suggest a topic for us to study, something that maybe they've heard a lot percolating in the news, or they've noticed that bills have been introduced over the past few years and they really want to learn more about it. So we've had groups in the past dealing with things like energy, biotechnology, things of that nature that really were more of a study arm, an educational arm, in addition to the bills that we get referred.
Well, we're going to put up on the screen the web address so that our viewers can go to the main web address, and then we're going to put up the one also on the subcommittees or the advisory subcommittees.
Yes, sir.
And as we were talking, there are 7, but 5 that are very active. So, and they're meeting quite frequently. You're being kept busy with those.
Yes, sir. We have meetings throughout the interim, and how how we tend to study issues is we will solicit membership from not just the members of the General Assembly, but also members of the public that are interested in the topics that we're studying. So we really strive to not make policy in a bubble. We really want to hear from the people that are using the technologies we're studying or involved in the policy areas that we're working in. And so in addition to our legislative members, we have members from the executive branch of government where appropriate, local government where appropriate, various corporations or entities that are involved in the issues we're studying, and even just members of the public who happen to have a strong interest in the area that we're studying. So we put together these advisory committees, and each one of those meets usually 3 to 4 times during the interim, so it keeps us busy.
It does, and as our viewers should know, we'll make sure they do, these meetings are open. And
Of course, yes.
They can attend those, and they'll find them on the General Assembly calendar or on your JCOTS.
Absolutely, and we always welcome public comment as well, even from people that aren't on the committee. So.
Yes. Well, let's name some of the subcommittees and see if you'd have any comments about them. There's one on cybersecurity.
Yes, sir. That was set up last year by Delegate Rust. Initially was set up just as an area that we wanted to learn more about. You hear a lot about cybersecurity at the federal and state level. Governor McDonnell has made it a little bit of a priority the past few years to make it Virginia a home for cybersecurity industry. So Delegate Rust set up that committee really as an educational opportunity to help the General Assembly learn more. During the 2013 session, we actually had a bill referred to us about return of ballots by overseas military, return of absentee ballots by overseas military. And the reason it was referred to JCOTS for study is because there were some security concerns about how the ballots would be returned and the safety of the ballots and making sure that they weren't manipulable or subject to hacking. So we thought that we already had the cybersecurity committee set up with a really, really talented, smart group of individuals from around the state who deal with cybersecurity issues every day. And so the mainstay of our study this year is focusing on those voting bills, but from a security perspective.
Right. And another one is identity management. Interesting title.
Yes, sir. That's a complicated issue. It's a hard issue to wrap our head around. But there is an ongoing movement to have secure identities online, so that whether you're doing your banking online, whether you're checking medical records online, or maybe you're just shopping on Amazon, right now you have different sign-ons for each of those sites and separate passwords. And there's a growing movement that perhaps one day we'd all have one single identity online that could be used across multiple sources, a very secure identity. But one of the issues raised by that is if private sector starts issuing those credentials, those online identities, what kind of liability would they face if something went awry?
Interesting.
And so we've been studying this issue for a few years. It took us a couple years just to wrap our head around what are all the underlying issues. There's some coinciding issues with the state issuing identities with first responders, for instance. Right. So we're trying to look at how the public and the private sector will work together on this issue, and then we're also looking at some private sector liability issues as well. So it's really, really interesting,
Yes.
but not the kind of thing that you wake up every day necessarily thinking
Right.
about until somebody brings it to your attention.
So another one then, intellectual property.
Yes, sir. We actually had 2 different bills referred to us this year by the General Assembly dealing with intellectual property issues. One of them has to do with contracts for inventors and how those are protected. And then the second bill was Delegate May's bill that has to do with some intellectual property rights. And so we put together a group to look specifically at these intellectual property issues. And as you know, Delegate May is the perfect member to be heading that committee up with his numerous patents and inventions as well.
Well, another subject that's in the national news a great deal, and computer crimes. What's that one about? So
back in 2004, JCOTS worked very closely with the Crime Commission and suggested some rewrites to Virginia's computer crime statutes. That deals with everything from computer fraud to computer trespass, phishing and spoofing and spamming and all the things that we hear about in the news. So those changes were adopted in 2004 and have largely been unchanged since then. This past year, the Attorney General had a bill that would have amended some of the legal standards used for computer trespass. And so instead of passing the bill this session, because the General Assembly knew that it had been the subject of a lot of study previously, they referred it back to JCOTS. We're again working with Crime Commission staff very closely, but just to review those proposed changes and see if they seem like a suitable policy.
Excellent. And then broadband and education.
Yes, sir. Again, number of bills referred to us by the General Assembly this year dealing with education. The ones that got the most attention had to do with the use of electronic textbooks from in the elementary, middle, and high school ages. There's issues of access, with having computer devices. There's also issues as to whether students have broadband connectivity at home and the ability to not only use an electronic textbook, but an interactive electronic textbook. And so that's why we named this committee the Broadband and Education Committee, because we're looking not only at the textbook issue, but also at broadband connectivity issues, which everybody knows is an issue depending on where you travel in the state and whether you have access or not. So that committee is delving into some of those issues, and hopefully we'll have some solid recommendations at the end of the year.
I'm not recalling, you may recall, what year it is that all graduating high school students will have to take an online course, but that's probably going to feed into the broadband issue.
Yeah, absolutely. The broadband issue is a pervasive issue. We've looked at the broadband issue in the past, gave it a couple years rest as municipalities and some other groups sort of picked up that ball and tried to run with it. As you know, because we're a legislative group, we're setting policy, but we're not the ones actually implementing the policy. Right. So sometimes we need to look at things, make some recommendations, or sort of lay some groundwork, and then wait for others to go out and try to apply those policies and see how they're working. And so now the issue got bounced back to us again to look at in light of this textbook issue.
Excellent. I think we've just about covered the active
yes, sir.
The active
yes,
advisory
sir.
committees, and we thank you so much for a wealth of information that you've given our viewers, and they can go online and see this a second time even after they view it on television. So thank you very much,
Great,
Lisa
thank you
Wallmeyer.
for the opportunity.
Yes, thank you. Welcome our viewers back to This Week in Richmond, and a very special welcome to Delegate Tom Rust.
Thank you so much for having me.
You came in the class of 2002.
That's correct.
A fairly large class of legislators at that time, and I noticed that you were already up to 30th in seniority among the legislators.
I am, yes.
And we appreciate a chance to talk with you. We've had a conversation with Lisa Wallmeyer on JCOTS, and we want to focus in some more from your perspectives, and also the subcommittee, or the advisory subcommittee that you chair. So tell our viewers something more about that subcommittee and about what you're doing in JCOTS.
Okay, well, thank you very much for having me, David. It's a pleasure to be back in Richmond. I'm sure Lisa gave you an overview of JCOTS, but JCOTS is basically the committee that a lot of the more technical issues are referred to by the General Assembly for us to study and look at, and in some cases make recommendations and others. But I think we are recognized as the technical experts, so to speak, that really delve into legislative matters. The subcommittee that I'm chairing is called the Cybersecurity Subcommittee, and it is a extremely complex, difficult subject. Luckily, we have industry representatives on it from all over the state, representing local governments, industry. Some lobby almost full-time at the federal government on the same issue. So we have a lot of in-depth knowledge. Now, why is cybersecurity an issue? Why is it important? We are told that over the course of a year, there are tens, if not hundreds of millions of attacks on the state system, people trying to get into the system to get information. And of course, we have all kinds of information in there on the citizens of Virginia, not only the payroll, but various and sundry driving records, health type stuff. So it is very critical that we understand cybersecurity and how to prevent it. And this committee is looking at that, seeing what we can do in that area. And I mentioned it was complex and difficult. And the one word that constantly comes up is privacy protection. And right. That is an issue in Virginia. It's an issue, a number of pieces of legislation have been put in on the federal level. None of them have advanced, primarily because of trying to address privacy issues. So luckily Lisa is very, very good and has picked a number of experts, and I'm just sort of herding them along.
Well, you've served on JCOTS for some time. And
Yes.
It really is a critical area, and one that if you go back before 1997, the General Assembly didn't have anything like that.
That's correct, and I give Joe May, delegate from Loudoun County, chairman of transportation, among other things. Joe is our technology expert in the General Assembly, and I believe it was his idea and his perseverance in getting it established. And Joe decided now a year and a half ago, since he'd been the chairman for a very long time, that he thought it was time to move on, and so he asked me to chair it, and I'm very happy to do so.
Now, is the cybersecurity issue here in Virginia have any connections with the big federal issue that's out there?
We have not, that has not been an issue in Virginia. What has been an issue in Virginia is all these attacks, not only just some single hacker, as I describe it, in his bedroom at 2 o'clock in the morning trying to get in, but we also have foreign governments trying to get in. And we've also heard on the committee, we have local government representatives, how they are really struggling with it because many of them being much smaller, or all of them being much smaller than the state, do not have the resources that we have to put the systems in place to help protect the systems. And the information they have, because of course they have personal property information, tax information, just a wealth of information that people would love to get illegally.
We're having this conversation here in July, and in some respects the session seems a long way away, but it will come soon. From this subcommittee, are you all seeing some possibility of some legislation in the next session, or where are you along that line?
We have had one meeting. We have another meeting very soon. In fact, it's actually today, which is talking about internet voting for the military. And that is a subject that we're all very interested in. We want to make sure that our military personnel have every opportunity to vote. And since they are spread literally all over the world and in some extremely remote sites, there was a piece of legislation put in by Senator Puller that would allow them to vote by the internet. We have a lot of concerns with that about voter privacy, the integrity of the vote, will the vote arrive? But there may be some legislation, some recommendations come out of that. But that's the type of issue that is sent to the JCOTS committee as a result of the General Assembly receiving some legislation and sending it to us for a technical analysis.
When we had a conversation with Lisa, we put the website addresses up, so we'll make sure those are up again during this segment as well. And we're talking here on July 15th.
Yes.
And as our viewers will be seeing this around the Commonwealth, there will be other meetings on that schedule, and so we encourage them to take note of the subcommittee that you're chairing, the full committee, and then those other 4 subcommittees that are very active too. There's a great deal of work going on.
There's a lot of work going on, and each committee has 1 or 2 members of the General Assembly, House and Senate. The member usually chairs the committee, and then it's made up from 10 to 15, maybe more, experts in that particular area. We do have, the meetings are open to the public, at least on my committee and on the full JCOTS. We invite and encourage public participation, and we do get it. So I would certainly invite everyone who has an interest in any particular subject that one of the subcommittees is looking at to come on down and participate.
Now, when the regular session's in, tell our viewers some about the other committees that you serve on at that time.
Well, I serve on science and technology, so it's sort of a natural that I would be on JCOTS. I'm on the Transportation Committee, I'm on the Commerce and Labor Committee, and I'm on the Education Committee. So I serve on 4 at least in my opinion, fairly major committees, and it's pretty hectic during the session, as you well know.
Yes, and ranking members on some of those committees too, right up,
Yes,
right behind the person who's the chair right now.
that's correct. That's correct.
I think our viewers around the Commonwealth who don't know you from your roots in Herndon and Fairfax County,
Yes.
would be interested to know that you've been involved in local government
Yes.
as well as now since 2002 in state government. So tell the folks from the western part, the central part of the state, how does someone get involved in local government and then decide to run for state office?
It's a really good question. A lot of people ask that, and I became a local elected official in 1971, and that was a result of the town of Herndon being very small, about 4,000 people at that time, beginning to go through growth spurts. They had questions about sewer and water and roads, and it was typically a town council that represented the community, and they were looking for people that had expertise in certain and sundry areas. I am a civil engineer in my professional life, so I think they thought they could get some free engineering from me on those issues. So I did that till 1975 or 1976, was elected mayor in 76, served in that capacity till 1984. In 1984, I decided that I had given enough public service. I was not defeated. Let me add that very quickly. I chose not to run again, and I actually thought at that point my political career was probably over. But in 1990, a number of people came to me and asked if I would run again, and I did, and I was elected mayor in 90 and served until I came here in 2002. So I think this is my 36th year, not consecutive and not all in the General Assembly, 36th or 37th year of elected office in Virginia.
You know, a fair number of your colleagues have experience in local government, serve in local government before they come to the General Assembly, and I would think that that's a real advantage.
I think it's a huge asset. I actually like local government very much. Local government is where my fairly trite expression is, where the rubber hits the road. You really have a very, very dramatic impact on the citizens of the community you serve, and you can have a pretty much of an instant impact. So I like local government. I enjoyed it very much. I contrast that to state government, where the issues are much broader, much bigger, and I do enjoy the policy decisions that we make here in Richmond, which then flow back to the citizens and the local governments. So I enjoy them both, but I found local government to be very rewarding.
Well, you know, one of the big issues that you all wrestled with and made some major progress on this past session was transportation.
Yes.
We've had Secretary Connaughton on and others talking about that. I guess on down the road there could be some issues related to transportation and local governments too. For instance, I live in Henrico County. Henrico is one of the jurisdictions where we maintain our own roads.
Yes.
And so I understand that that's a policy issue that the General Assembly will be wrestling with in the future.
Well, I know in the past, David, there has been some discussion. The term used is devolution, if that's what you're talking about, where
Yes.
basically the state would get out of the road business, other than probably a number of the primaries, certainly the interstates, and turn back to local government the secondary road system, which is essentially what Henrico has done since, I think, 1932, and Arlington has done it also. I don't think there's much appetite for that in the General Assembly. It has been talked about, it has been studied. George Mason University did a pretty comprehensive study on it, and it all comes back to money. I mean, if we were to do that, and I don't think we will, then basically you've got to give local government the resources to take care of the roads. I think the transportation bill that you referred to, and I'm sure Secretary Connaughton went through in detail, does give, at least in Northern Virginia, 30% of the funds that are raised there flow back directly to local government. So it's a pretty nice package for them. Fairfax County that I represent gets about 30 million. Loudoun gets about 12, 15 million, something like that, which will build over time.
Yes. It'll be a significant start on trying to address a transportation problem that's been out there a long time.
Absolutely.
Well, Delegate Russ, we appreciate so much your being on this week in Richmond and talking about JCOTS and about some other matters as well. And we wish you a good summer and look forward to working with you.
Thank you so much, David. It's always a pleasure to be here, and thank you for having me. I've enjoyed it.
Thank you.
This Week in Richmond is made possible in part by Dignity Memorial, caring for our communities with a network of funeral homes and cemeteries in Virginia and throughout North America. More information about Dignity Memorial's providers is online at dignitymemorial.com. Alpha Natural Resources, an energy company dedicated to respecting the land. Alpha Natural Resources, we power the world through the energy of our people. Haley Buick GMC, the place for a new Verano or Terrain Denali, in Richmond and online at haleybuickgmc.com. Everywhere there are lighting poles, there's one more opportunity to save money. Intelligent Illuminations provides cost-effective wireless lighting solutions for roadway or area outdoor lights. Kanawha Valley Arena, Virginia's cowboy town, hosting an array of events from Civil War reenactments to diesel truck pulls. More information online at virginiarodeo.com. The Virginia Chamber of Commerce, the voice of the Virginia business community, working in legislative, regulatory, and political arenas to promote the free enterprise system. Additional support is provided by these sponsors. And by the members of Virginia's public television stations. Thank you.